Hello and welcome to a new episode of Other Record Labels. I'm your host, Scott Orr, and thank you so much for listening. And we have an incredible episode today with Carl, who is the founder of Joyful Noise Recordings. We're going to get to that interview. You know, I had so many people ask me to interview this label. Well, not so many, at least three people. I have to check that survey we did because there may have been more, but at least three people specifically asked if we could do a Joyful Noise episode. It was so much fun to talk with Carl, and I even realized going through the website like how many records of his, you know, from the years have impacted me and the bands he's worked with. And so I was so pleased to chat with him, and it's a really, really, really interesting conversation. In fact, we talk about this like mysterious thing that happened to him, that he got really lucky, where he sort of unlocked the secret desires, if you will, of his customers, and that really kind of set him off into where they're at today. And they're super successful, and they're super loved by their customer base. And so we talk a little bit about, you know, how he took a risk and he kind of discovered something. So I think you're going to really get something from it. And, you know, as label owners or people thinking of starting a label, we're really focusing on these episodes and the previous episodes on the topic of marketing and doing a better job at promoting our releases and building album campaigns. And I have this, you know, if this is something that's interesting to you or something that you at your label may find confusing or struggle with, go to otherrecordlabels.com/marketing. I've put together this little marketing checklist from some of the people that I've interviewed over the past couple of years, as well as some of my own things that I try to do leading up to a release and on release day. So if you want a copy of this marketing checklist, go to otherrecordlabels.com/marketing. I hope you enjoy this interview. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I'm excited to chat with you. I had the Alpha and Omega double album from Danielson Family on CD when I was super young, and I remember when Snap Out of It came out. I was so excited to hear new music from them, and I actually just found when I was researching for this, I had been looking for some of the old like Danielson Family records, and I couldn't find it on Spotify, but then I found it under Danielson and not under the family. Anyway, I'm going to deep dive back into that catalog. I'm pretty stoked to hear it all again.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff, man. I'm a huge fan of Daniel, and Alpha and Omega might be my favorite. I don't know. I really love Fetch the Compass Kid. This is incredible. And Tell Another Joke with the Old Chopping Block. Yeah. Those are probably three favorites.
What was the Smooth Death? What record was that on? I think that was maybe Chopping Block.
I think that's Tell Another Joke. Yeah. I think it is.
Yeah. That was probably the first song I heard from them, like on a Tooth and Nail sampler back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I was listening to Alpha and Omega just yesterday when I found it finally, and it's interesting how some of this like kind of weirder music ends up being a lot more timeless than lots of other music from the 90s. But like, I don't know, I just feel like that record could come out today and be totally received well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because artists like that are not they're not writing according to a current trend or whatever. Totally. You know, they're more or less unaware of what is popular at the time. You know, they're really writing from a place of more pure art, I guess.
Absolutely. I want to ask you, like, kind of segueing into like streaming and when it comes to like what kind of streaming strategy a label like yours might have, because like talking about Danielson, you know, music that's more experimental and less commercially appealing, there's not really as many homes for, you know, passive listeners like on dinner party playlists and stuff like that. What role does streaming play for your label?
It's different for every artist.
Okay.
I would say that some of our artists they can get in a sweet spot where they are both experimental and it can be and it can do well on streaming platforms. So a lot of like instrumental music, you know, for instance, you know, can work well on, you know, like the deep focus type playlists and shit like that. So we've got a couple artists that I would definitely describe as experimental that do well on streaming platforms. Like L1011 would be one of them. Kishi Bashi does well, and Sunlux.
Right.
But I think by and large, you're right that the more experimental music doesn't translate as well to streaming platforms because the streaming platforms, like the whole model of that economy is based on having, like, appealing to a really wide group of people, you know? And, you know, whereas in the past, like, you know, these really bizarre artists like Danielson, you know, could survive off of touring and releasing a record that sells, you know, 1,000 copies or whatever. Now that's not really possible. So it's definitely a strange time for those kind of bands, and we're trying to like be as innovative as possible in terms of both adapting them to the streaming platforms, but also like trying to not adapting their music to be clear,
of course,
but like adapting our approach and just trying to do what we can to get the most, you know, listens on streaming platforms. But we're also just trying to come up with different approaches for those kind of bands, things like artist specific subscriptions, things like that. Because a lot of these bands have a super dedicated smaller audience. You know, they've got an audience of 2,000 people worldwide who will gladly buy everything and anything that this band does, you know? And so part of our approach has been doing more limited specialty, artful kind of physical releases for those types of artists and fans.
Right. And I want to ask you about some of those things. Just thinking about streaming though, real quickly, you're a label that's been around for, you know, over 15 years. What was your perception or your plan of streaming as it started to emerge? Because you guys completely predated that world, even in a way, you know, you're predating even the MP3 necessarily or the iTunes world. But what was your perception of things as things started moving in that direction?
Well, I would say that so even though we started 15 years ago, it's not, you know, 15 years ago, I was a freshman in college, just putting out my own band CD. You know, it wasn't a real label until maybe like 7 years ago. I would say it became like my career, and you know, we have got, you know, employees and things. Yeah, right. but we're coming at the streaming emergence in a kind of a weird from a weird direction, because our first successes as a label were really from the super weird, artful, physical limited packages that we would sell direct to customers.
Right. Okay.
So things like, we did like a cassette box set for Joan of Arc, and we did one for Of Montreal, like compiling all 10 of their albums at the time, you know, into a screen printed wooden box set. And this is back when cassettes were still, unheard of.
I actually read that you, were you like one of the first labels to do cassettes, or was that just like exaggerated by the press? Because I read a few articles from like 2011, 2012.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's accurate.
That's very cool.
In terms of like, we sort of like pioneered that resurgence of that format.
That's awesome.
And that led to a lot of our other like successes as a label. It led to a lot of our relationships with bands, you know. So doing a Cassette Box set of Montreal, led us to creating a friendship with Kishi Bashi, you know, who's one of our bigger artists now, you know, things like that. So, but basically, like we were way more focused on that stuff,
right?
You know, when and so like when Spotify came out, and you know, we just saw it as kind of as cake or whatever, right. You know, like we were like, oh fuck, all right, okay. Like people are just pirating this shit anyway. We might as well get a tiny bit of money for it.
Good point.
So, I mean, so we never came really from the good old days when, like, you know, when people were buying CDs and stuff.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, like, I'm not necessarily like against the whole model of streaming. I think the model itself is the future, you know, and it's doing a lot of good in terms of like making music accessible to people who have never had record stores, you know, people in countries that you can't pronounce the name of, you know, now have access to all the music in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's amazing. But I think they should definitely revise how they pay bands.
Yeah.
You know?
No, for sure. I mean, so was the, you know, I saw that you were doing flexi discs and of course tapes and pioneering that. And that must have just really fit well with your audience and with the genre of music. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so. Like we were doing those types of releases for artists whose fans were definitely very interested in having something unique and special, you know, from those artists. For sure. It doesn't work as well when it's an unknown artist. That's a whole other like set of challenges.
Oh, okay.
You know?
What about the white label series? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. The white label series, we started that, I think 4 or 5 years ago. And the idea was, basically we just realized that like there are so many amazing records out there that, you know, from the past and current records that, just essentially don't have any hope of being pressed on vinyl.
Okay. Yeah,
and
totally.
And the effort was just to try to unearth some of those obscure records and press them on vinyl so that they're sort of canonized.
Yeah, you know, totally.
And so we decided, though, instead of us picking these obscure records, we would instead ask different artist curators each year to pick their favorites.
Oh man, that's such a great idea.
Yeah, thank you. And it seems to be working well because like then, you know, we can line up people like, you know, St. Vincent or Lou Barlow or whoever to choose their favorite record, and then they're the advocate for it, and they can write a little curator statement telling, you know, the subscribers to this series like why they like this record so much. And it means a lot more coming from, you know, an amazing well-known artist
absolutely.
Like that. So,
were these available in stores or was it a subscription only thing?
So we do it as a subscription only thing through the label, but then we give the bands 125 copies.
Oh, cool.
And then they can, so the idea being that they can then sell them and sort of kickstart their own fan base.
Oh, sure. What
Um,
I imagine, like going, depending on the era from where these albums were done or recorded, I imagine it would be somewhat of an arduous task to get the licensing or to get the masters, depending on how it was recorded. Did you run into that at all?
We haven't run into any licensing issues because, most of the time the curators that we line up have an album in mind that they are already familiar with. Like, they are already friends with that artist.
Okay.
It's like it's somebody that they toured with in 2005, and they have been carrying around this fucking CDR ever since. Like it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
so it was generally a self-release.
So it's usually really. Yeah,
okay.
Usually it's something that's never been released. It's definitely like part of the rules are that this is something that has never been on vinyl.
Yes.
Sometimes they, the digital's already been out there on BandCamp or something like that, but it's definitely never been on vinyl. And usually we haven't, run into any real like licensing problems because it's usually the case where the curator is, is already sort of friends with the artist.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
We did run into like one like archival kind of thing recently where one of our curators, Ken Lane, his pick was a really obscure band that only had their music on cassettes and 1 7-inch. So they just like physically mailed us 2 cassettes of their 2 separate recordings and then a 7-inch, and we have to digitize it.
Oh, interesting.
Sequence it and stuff.
How did it turn out?
Don't know yet. It's still being digitized, but I'm sure it'll be fun.
Oh, that's such a great idea. I actually think, even, of course, obscure independent releases, but there's a lot of releases I think that came out in the early 2000s and the late 90s that just maybe at the wrong place at the wrong time, just got looked over and even early 2000s was slightly before the vinyl renaissance where everything was getting pressed. That's such a great idea.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been good to like it feels good to like help this music get out there.
Yeah.
These are all really worthy records.
Tell me a little bit about then the VIP membership, because I've seen this with other labels as well, but yours seems like a really integral part of your operations.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So we started it maybe like, I think it's going on 8 years at this point.
Wow.
It was essentially a because of the types of releases that we were doing and becoming known for, the super limited sort of highly tactile packaging kind of releases. We were sort of naturally developing this cult following and at the same time, like we were a young business struggling to just survive, and so what we really needed was some consistent recurring revenue coming in order to quit the day jobs, so that was essentially the impetus for it. And so we started doing it, the VIP membership, where essentially $5 a month, and in exchange for that, you get a bunch of perks, including, free downloads of all our new stuff. You get early access to releases. So like the day before we announce it publicly, and
that's great.
The day before it's on Pitchfork and all that shit, you can. You can actually like log in and stream the whole record. Amazing. And buy it at that time. And then we have a, generally speaking, for all our like new records, we'll have a VIP edition. You know, that's the most limited version that this record will ever be pressed in. You know, it's usually like 300 or 500 copies, and usually comes with some bonus tracks on a flexi disc or a cassette, and it's hand numbered and all that stuff. So it's a good way to like make sure that those collectible records also like go to the right people.
Right. True.
Rather than, you know,
Discogs.
Because we do have we've got a strict, you know, no flipping policy.
Okay.
And so if we catch people just like buying records just to flip them, you know, then we'll kick them out of the VIP
Interesting.
club.
So are there different tiers or is it $5 for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, so we've experimented with some different tiers over the years, and until recently we were doing like monthly 7 inches. What we decided to do this for 2020 was sort of retire the monthly 7 inches and instead do monthly full lengths. And so so essentially the what we call early bird VIPs are the people that buy in early and essentially like pre-buy all the VIP editions for that year. And so they're not only getting the digital benefits and the access and stuff, but they're actually getting a physical record in the mail every month. For
$5 a month?
No,
okay.
Sorry. No, that early bird one is it's the equivalent of $20 a month.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
I imagine, you know, talking like in this genre, because I know there's a lot of labels that I have in my life that I would feel committed to, but I imagine like you have a fan base who is really receptive to nearly everything, if not everything you put out.
Yeah. Actually, so we actually have a more committed club. But I guess you could consider it a tier of the VIP
Sure.
also, which is called the JNR 100, and these are people that pay $100 per month to automatically get everything we release.
Oh my gosh!
And that's been an awesome. And they also get numbers 1 through 100, you know, so they get the low number records. They also get like extra bonuses. Like
that's amazing.
They're more of a community where we
sure.
can like, we you know, if we're considering signing a band or something, we'll send them demos, you know, to check out.
No
and
way.
They can vote on it.
That is so
stuff
great.
like that. So they're like our, you know, or co-op or something.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, that is beautiful. I remember talking with, I think it was Specialist Subjects in the UK, and who do something similar. And I remember there's this really interesting concept where when you have a group of people who have essentially prepaid for any release, you have this confidence going into any pressing that you have 50 or 100 already spoken for.
Absolutely. It gives us the ability to think about the art over commerce.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
So we can prioritize music. You know, we can afford to release records that might not sell that many copies. We know it'll at least pay for itself.
Yeah, and
because of these.
And
things.
it really helps you leverage even just a better price for manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Such a cool thing. So do you have I remember BandCamp, and I spoke with BandCamp on this show about, they have a membership platform as well. It had some problems with it, but do you use an online platform? Like, how do you communicate with these folks? Or
yeah, I mean, we just do it all through our website.
Okay.
We've had lots of different website platforms over the years, but luckily we've sort of that type of technology has really gotten a lot better.
Okay.
You know, so we use Shopify, and there's a recurring payments app called Recharge.
Okay.
That we use,
and they can log in. They have like some sort of portal.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So like we can I think but we've got several pages that are locked, that only members can see, including our private stash, which is like our otherwise sold out releases. If a couple copies resurface or whatever, we put them in.
Oh, that's so cool.
In the private stash so people can grab them there. And so yeah, it's essentially all handled on our website, and then we do the communication through email blasts and through private Facebook groups too.
I've always been really interested. I mean, even when you're talking about the $100 a month club, I think it would just be so much fun to be a part of something like that. And even though that's a steep price, if that's what a lot of people spend on drinking and entertainment anyway in a month. So I think that's such a really cool thing. I've always been interested in trying it, but I'm from Canada, and the shipping has always been a little bit tricky joining a club like that. Do you have international members in that club?
We do. Not a ton, but I think there are like 15 or so.
That's cool.
People from UK, Europe, and Canada.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I know it just kind of excludes us from the media mail, so I know it's a little bit harder.
I know it's it's especially bad for UK and our German customers seem to have it the worst.
Oh, really?
Their stuff just always it's even when the packages arrive on time, they have to pay a ton in customs and stuff too. They have to pay on both ends. It sucks.
I think it's getting to the point where it's probably cheaper just to take it across yourself on a boat or something. Once a year, bring everything.
We have definitely thought about having a separate, fulfillment warehouse over there.
Right.
And we tried to do it once, but it wasn't the right partner. So I think we might try it again, depending on how bad this USPS thing gets.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Is it tricky to feed this machine with fresh content? Like I would always fear that I couldn't sustain something like that. Like does that create any stress or anything?
I think it used to. For us, when we started these things, we were not in as stable of a place in terms of a consistent roster and everything. But at this stage, no, it's actually the opposite problem. we have too much content.
You're over-delivering.
Right now, we're either over-delivering or scheduling out. We're having to schedule out releases just really far in advance.
Interesting. That's really cool.
So
that's great.
There's no shortage of amazing records out there,
Yeah.
And the bigger problem is just that we can't work with all of them because we have limited time and resources. But
do you have a minimum or a maximum amount of releases that is ideal for you, per year or per month?
So in 2020, we decided to do 12 proper full lengths.
Okay.
And that's but then we also have the 12 white label releases.
12 a year.
We also have box sets. Yeah, one a month.
Oh my gosh!
And then we also have box sets and singles and things like that. So, all said and done, we're probably hovering around 30 releases a year.
Wow.
We're actually trying to do fewer.
Yeah.
Because it's just it can get stressful.
Yeah.
Stresses the rest of the
I imagine
out.
There has to be overlap too, because there's got to be months where there's less release happening. So is there overlap of two albums coming out around the same time? Or is it actually once a month?
We try to avoid that. We try to avoid it. We definitely don't do two albums on the same day.
Of course. Okay, that's good.
That's where we draw the line. but what we try to keep it to one album, one proper new full length album per month.
Oh, interesting.
But sometimes that and especially with COVID and stuff, that fucked that all up.
Yeah.
So,
Gosh.
like we had to do a couple like split releases where the digital came out on the original date and physical came out later, that kind of thing. So.
I feel really bad for people releasing records in March and April of 2020 because it just got overshadowed. But then all of a sudden, people started realizing that everyone was at home and ready for fresh content. And so then people who released in May and June were fine. And now I think it's kind of sort of gone back to normal. People are releasing things as normal. But those people who had records out in March and early April, I really feel for them.
Yeah. I think that's a correct assessment. Like the records that we put out in March and April definitely feel like it, COVID definitely hurt them. All the records I think are hurting because of the lack of touring.
Yeah.
And not all the record stores being open.
But that's right.
But those months were definitely the worst.
I think it would be really nice if a lot of the blogs and Pitchfork and Stereo Gum were to do a top 50 albums of March and April of 2020, separate from the 2020 list,
right?
Just to give those proper day.
The stuff you missed because of COVID. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Has there been? I mean, you were making, you were in a band, you were self-releasing stuff 15 or so years ago. Has there been a window of time, either in the past 7 years or prior to that stands out to you as a good time to be a label? Was there a year or a few years where things were easier or more responsive?
Good question. I don't think so.
Okay.
At least for us, it's been like it's been a constant, I don't want to say struggle because that makes it, that puts a negative connotation on it. But we've been constantly trying to shift our approach. We've been trying to, like, this is an industry that's changing really rapidly,
Sure.
And, and we've tried to be as malleable as possible, and like always sort of, thinking ahead. So that in itself, like, sort of, I don't see any part of our history as like good old days, like we're always, we're always like looking towards the future.
There's always a new struggle and there's always a new, opportunity. It's just, the enemies change all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How important, like going back to some of these white labels and the VIP, how important is those type of unique marketing strategies? What drives you to create these initiatives as opposed to just signing a band, releasing a record and repeating it over and over? Right.
Well, so beyond the fact that it's just, it's good to have recurring revenue. Like that's one thing.
Yeah, right.
Like, cause like, records flop all the time. You can't really, at least for a business like ours, which, is a small business, we've got 8 employees, like it's having that recurring monthly revenue, being able to count on that is, a huge relief. And it's allowed us to be able to, plan more effectively for the future and do records that we otherwise might not be able to take the chance on. And so I think there's that, recurring revenue benefit, obviously, but also the white label type releases, like, I think just also speak to our mission as a label or whatever to really be a platform for adventurous, undiscovered music, to be able to shine a light on some of the the more adventurous music out there that people might not know about.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'm kind of looking through the white label stuff now on your website. This reliable income, I imagine that the COVID, we were talking about March and April. I imagine that was a time where you probably were thankful to have this type of ongoing support.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, all during COVID, our experience has been, people seem to order more records during the lockdown.
That's great.
I was really worried that, with people,
tightening their budget,
losing their jobs and everything, like it would, like that it would be the opposite. But I think a lot of, people that collect records are by and large and like white collar kind of jobs, and they're able to work from home, and they're not spending money on restaurants and bars, and so I think that a lot of those people they had some extra money to spend, and so at least through our direct sales through the website, we actually saw a bit of an uptick during COVID. But,
that's amazing.
Obviously we saw obviously all the physical, distribution, the record stores is way down.
That's tough.
Sync money is way down.
Oh, really? Yeah, because productions have stopped. Yeah, I heard that from Secretly too.
Yeah. So
yeah.
And it seemed like streaming for us stayed about the same, but it changed a little bit.
Okay.
It was interesting to watch.
How so?
Less, I think fewer playlist listens, fewer casual listeners, as people, were disrupted from their daily routines, their drives, and working out and stuff. Yeah. And people, I think, were listening more intentionally, or are listening more intentionally to records. Great. Rather than just letting the algorithm feed it to them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are a lot of music collectors, perhaps were more blessed with their job staying the same during this, and we're just forced to work from home. And but then there's also people like me who will continue to buy records even when I can't afford to do so. It's not the first thing I cut out of the budget. I remember I was
nor should it be. I don't think.
Yeah,
music is healing. It's like it's food.
Well, I wonder too
for your brain.
I hope that a lot of music fans will transfer the money that they would pay for live into these BandCamp days and into buying more physical stuff from artists.
Totally. It seems to be what's happening.
That's amazing.
We've had a few real successful BandCamp days. So we released an album from Deerhoof, during quarantine. I think it was late May, and they've just used this time, time off from tour to just keep releasing records.
That's great.
And so we did a B-sides record one of the BandCamp days. Then we did a live record that benefited Black Lives Matter, and that raised upwards of $10,000.
Oh my gosh.
So it's pretty awesome.
That's incredible. Yeah, it has. I have seen a lot of artists kind of shift to using this time to be more prolific. And I think now we have a better understanding on how to release a record during this time. Yeah.
And we're kind of changing our approach on that, and considering doing digital releases quicker, and then physical at a later date.
Oh, okay.
Or at least for certain releases, we've done that approach.
I've always wondered.
I think it makes sense if it's especially if it's for a timely cause.
Yes, of course.
like racial justice.
Yes, yeah. And so the BandCamp days have been good. I mean, I think they reported, was it $2 million for so far, or just one of the days alone?
I think it was 20 million total.
Right.
Was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right.
It's pretty crazy.
I think the first one, which was way back in April, I think was maybe 3 or 4 million just on that first day alone. So yeah, that's
right.
My goodness, that is incredible.
Yeah. It's cool how they've, like, BandCamp has emerged as like the artist friendly digital platform. They're like the Superman to Spotify's kryptonite or whatever, or Lex Luthor, maybe.
Oh my goodness, there was a lot.
Oh, that guy looks like Lex Luthor.
He does. In your defense, yeah, he does. That's right. I was kind of hopeful back in April when they announced, and Spotify announced that they were doing this way for fans to donate to their artists directly on the platform, and I thought, man, that could be a really cool thing. But it's turned out to be just like absolute rubbish. Like, I'd love to know if anyone has received donations from that whatsoever.
Right.
And it certainly looks temporary.
Right. And the difference I see between the BandCamp and Spotify approaches is, like, BandCamp was giving their share. You know, they were giving up their money for it. Spotify was just asking people. Yes. Spotify was asking people and the artists to give more money.
Yeah. That's sketchy. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why don't you guys just commit to giving part of your profits?
Yes.
Like, part of every stream.
Right.
You know?
Right. Not a chance.
Yeah. Not a publicly traded company like that.
Yeah, maybe the shareholders would want to give up their dividends or something 1 month to all the artists. It's so great about BandCamp, and I'm glad to. So you've been doing exclusive releases, like anticipating that. I mean, they've now announced. We're talking now in the summertime, but they've now announced that. Is it one Friday a month?
Yeah, I think they're keeping on the. Wait, is it one Friday a month, or is it
I don't know. I want to say
every Friday.
It can't be every Friday.
The year?
That's insane.
It's got to be one. Yeah, that would be excessive.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can.
Maybe it's one Friday. I think it's the first Friday per month for the rest of the year.
Okay,
that's what it is.
Okay. Now, we could be wrong. We could be wrong. Hold on. I found the link here. I just want to get it right. We'll continue to hold BandCamp Fridays on the first Friday of every month until the end of the year. Okay.
Cool.
So, I mean, that gives you time to say plan for November 6th or December 4th and to do something pretty cool. I mean, that's enough time to even press something.
Yeah, or at least get it rolling and start pre-orders, you know? Yeah. We've been like that. Those have sort of allowed our artists to kind of think about new stuff that they've been working on that maybe, you know, they wouldn't release quite yet.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
That they're just like, fuck it, you know, let's put it all out there right now, you know?
One of my favorite things I've seen come out of COVID is artists not only being prolific, but being a lot less precious with their material and releasing demos and live recordings. I'm a huge fan of demos, and I love hearing that kind of stuff. And
I do too. Yeah, I agree. It's nice that like it's taken the pressure off a little bit, you know, of the artistic pressure from those artists.
That's totally
And yeah, I agree. I love hearing like the early versions of things, like seeing all the seams.
Oh, sure. Yeah. iPhone demos and
seeing the guts.
Yeah. I love that. When I was reading about like the history of your label, ironically, my label, or the first incarnation of the label name and logo, was on the back of a CD I put out. And I read that that's your story as well. What was it about needing that sort of label validation back then in the CD era?
Yeah. I think my logic at the time was just like, I was trying to do anything I could
to get noticed,
to get noticed in any way whatsoever, you know, whether it was, you know, better shows or, you know, getting played on college radio or whatever, getting reviews, you know, and I just thought people would take us more seriously if we had a label, even though it was fake. It was just a fake label. Yeah. A fake label name.
And so was it Joyful Noise?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I would have chosen a different one, actually.
Same. But it's going back to those demos. It takes all the pressure off of coming up with a logo or a name because it's just fake. Yeah. It's just in the moment. Right. That is so funny. That's amazing. So then what was the transition? Because you say that things really took off only 7 years ago, but we're talking about you doing this back in 2003. Is that right?
Yeah. It was 2003. So maybe it's more like 8 or 9 years ago at this point, or 10. I don't know, but I can point you to the release. Okay. Whenever that came out. Whenever this. So basically, after I put the fake label name on my band's CD, I started releasing just some of my friends' bands on CD and just kind of trying to emulate the other labels, you know, that I saw in my, you know, circle, what Secretly was doing and whatnot. And it didn't go very well, you know, essentially just, you know, lost money on all those, you know, first 20 albums or whatever. Wow. But I just kept doing it because I wanted to keep, you know, supporting this music that I found so meaningful. But I would say the real turning point happened when I got drunk one night at my house and was listening to Joan of Arc, one of my favorite bands, and I randomly emailed Polyvinyl to see if they would let me release one of their albums on cassette. And like, surprisingly, they got back right away and said, sure. Like, that's great. That's crazy, but go for it. And then I just kept kind of pushing my luck. And I was like, what about all 7 of the albums that you've released from Joan of Arc on cassette?
Oh, wow.
You know, and they were like, sure. And then I wrote their previous label, Jade Tree.
Oh, cool.
And asked them the same thing, and they were just like, we don't give a fuck. and so I ended up releasing this 10 cassette box set that was more of like an art piece.
Yes,
you know? And that sold out immediately. It sold out in one day.
Oh my god!
And I was just shocked.
And sorry,
you know?
can I interrupt you? So this is this the wooden box with like a cigar box type of thing?
Right.
Oh my gosh. And that's like a big undertaking. Did you have to kind of get financially involved with that before even taking pre-orders?
Trying to remember. I think I did have to like borrow a little bit of money from friends. I think I had to borrow like $1,500.
Was the box custom made? Because it fits like...
Yeah. The box is custom made by my friend who's a woodworker.
Oh, okay.
And screen printed from another friend who does that stuff. So yeah, like, but when that sold out right away, after years of, you know, not selling shit, I was just like, it felt like I had cracked the code. Like, oh my God, you know, people want like this was a really like crazy project that I didn't think anybody was going to care about, but it turns out that people really valued this, like this highly tactile, you know, artful, handmade, you know, object.
Totally.
In connection with their music. And so so that was sort of, when that came out, that was the transition from, you know, the day job to doing this label full time.
Just from that one release.
Well, that one release didn't pay enough to to really start a business, but it's the idea of that release, you know. And like that release, like I would say that started our fan base as a label, and it started my after that release, I started thinking about how to run a label differently. I started I didn't care what the more established labels were doing at that point. You know, I was trying to run a different kind of label after that.
I want our listeners to go to your website and look at this box set, because first of all, it seems like it's criminally underpriced to get 10 tapes in a wooden box for $50. Maybe
that's true. We should have priced it at like 100.
Yeah.
But I thought no one was going to care. Yeah.
I can think of maybe 20 or 30 bands that I like who I would buy all of their records on cassette in a box like this. I mean, it's a great idea, especially because none of these had been done on tape ever. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the cassette box set was an idea that we then did again of Montreal, and we did it for Dinosaur Jr. for their first 3 albums, and then we actually just recently, I think, just earlier this year, did it for Deerhoof, and that one included their first. That was like for a 25th anniversary of the band, and included 16 albums.
Oh my gosh!
And that one, the packaging is that's my favorite one. It's unreal. It's so good.
I mean, every album got a redesign. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Like, and then we.
And see, there's something great as a music fan and a fan of record labels, a fan of formats. I look at this and I think, fan or not of the band, I want this on my shelf. I want to own that. I don't even care if it's silence on all 16 cassettes. You just want that. I love that.
And that's, I mean, that's a lot of what we're selling these days. You know, when we're talking about vinyl, it's like, you know, we're not selling convenience to the music. Yeah, you know, like we're selling the trophy, the talking piece or whatever, like the thing to put on your shelf to like show your friends and like absorb as a piece of art.
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, yeah, no, that's totally true. And I think with the advent of streaming, we can get all these records in 10 seconds on my phone or on my watch. But it's not about that. It's about, I don't even know what it is. I don't know. People say it's tactile. People say it's emotional, but for some reason I'm compelled to it, even though I don't need it. I have the music elsewhere.
Right. But it's, you know, listening, especially vinyl, you know, going through the experience of, you know, sitting down with an album on vinyl and absorbing the artwork, and, you know, reading the lyrics and stuff like that is a much more, it's a much deeper experience of that music than, you know, hearing a track on a playlist while you're jogging. Oh, totally. You know? It's just a completely different thing. And if you really love this music, you know, then you want to experience it in that deeper way, which is why I think vinyl sales have, you know, continued to rise and probably will never go away.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like it's just really fitting in a nice groove, pun intended, and it's just, I love it. I was realizing the other day my own behavior. I don't know if other people are like this, but on my iTunes, my Apple Music collection, I only listen to the recently added. I only listen to like the records of this week and last week, and for a couple weeks, and then it switches up. Whereas my vinyl collection is a complete opposite. It's 20-year-old records, 30-year-old records of the last 10 years that have really stood out to me. And I very rarely am I listening to a new release on the turntable. You know what I mean? It's just super strange.
I think that is how a lot of people listen to music now, and I don't think it's a bad thing,
No,
you know, to be able to sort of, to listen to the record, to, sample it essentially,
yes,
for
audition
free.
it. Yeah.
And yeah. And then if you really, really love it, you buy the physical and absorb it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. It's been so great to talk with you. I love the label. I love, I love that mindset. And I kind of feel like I just want to ponder on that for a little bit about how you had this, mindset shift after selling the first box set and kind of, unlocking the secret of your customers. I feel like that's something that a lot of us labels need to have, that breakthrough moment.
Yeah. Thanks. I was lucky to to have it.
That's awesome.
Real lucky.
So great to chat with you.
Right.
Thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations on a great label. Gosh, thanks to Carl from Joyful Noise. You got to go to joyfulnoiserecordings.com to learn more about this label if you don't already know. And I know we have some listeners who are going to be like, oh, thank goodness. It's been so long. I wanted you to do an episode with these guys. But boy, what a great catalog they have. What a great label they have, and such cool insights into how Carl kind of discovered the wants and needs and desires of his customer base, and just, started designing and making products for that. And it's something we need to realize. And I've talked about this in the course that I did, but we talked a lot about market sophistication, about this idea that our audience, is familiar with people releasing albums. So when we talk about releasing a new record or releasing a new single, it doesn't really give the audience any sort of excitement or goosebumps because they're sophisticated. They've heard that before for decades. And so when you do something incredible, like putting a series or a discography of cassettes in a cool little wooden box, well, the market isn't as sophisticated because they haven't seen something like that before. And so congratulations to Carl for really, finding that and what that was for his listeners and for his label. I think that's such a cool thing. On this topic of marketing, go to our website to get a free marketing checklist that you can download that will help you if you're a self-releasing DIY artist or if you are a record label. Go to otherrecordlabels.com/marketing to download our free marketing checklist. Thanks for listening.